Okay.
And we are live!
Hi, everybody. Hello, everybody. Can you see me? Oh, cool. Hi. There's a little bit of a delay in the commentary, so in case I miss anything, I hope Alexis will help me with that. I wanted to show you today how to do some bows, and I want to show you some samples of what I'm thinking about to start off. We will be most likely doing a shape a lot along like this. Maybe less lace. We're gonna do smaller lace, like simple scallop lace, just to get the idea of how it's gonna work. But here I have a variety of types of materials in these three bows. Here we have simple synthetic gabardine, which is quite nice. I mostly work in this material. I find it drapes mostly very well. It doesn't crumple. Here we have some cotton lace and cotton, as in fabric, and it tends to crumble a bit. Like you can see, if I store it, it crumples a little bit, so it's not as nice for if you're a haphazard uh, um, keeping your bows in haphazard way. I mean, so this is from Bodyline actually, and you can see here we have a pin back. I'm gonna do one without any backing, but you can finish it as you would like. Like you can add the pin back, or you can add feed bow through it like this. So you can actually change it to put it in the middle of your head or to the side. Or I have some other sample backings here. Here's a simple pin back. There's different ways. There's ones with like small locking situation here as well. So whichever you prefer, like if you're into it, OG more rather than Lolita, then this is better for you, I would guess, because you can add it to your cravats or on your hats or whatever you wish, really. Here we have a simple alligator clip, which is like simple. They come bigger and smaller as well. So, well, I guess you know what an alligator clip is. And here we have some. I don't actually know how you call this locking mechanism. I guess a barrette is the right term for it. You can use this. For this one, you might need to sew it on before you finish the middle section, but we'll get into that. So it's like stays there nicely. Other things for like the bow part, here I have some samples of types of actual head bows, head bands, I guess. Here's a simple plastic one. This is really light and nice on your head, and if you don't cover it with anything, it tends. Most of them tend to have these little teeth that grip into your wigs or hair or whatever you're wearing or not wearing on your head. Here we have some metal ones. I tend to like to use these because they're sturdier than the plastic ones. They don't break as easily, and they're really bendy. They're also very nice on your head. They don't really. If you tend to wear glasses like I do, then they don't push on your ears as much. They're not as uncomfortable. Here's some other options. These are already covered. If you have bows, if you know the color of your bow that you want to use, you can buy already covered ones. I tend to buy these and cover them on top of the covering already because, well, they're more often, it's more often that you can find these ones rather than the plain, like naked ones like this. I don't know why these are harder to come by, at least locally here. And then we have this really wide plastic band. These are best for bigger, bigger head bows or any other like accessory. If you want a really bigger one, it needs more space to grip on so it doesn't like flop all over the place, as well as if you want to make like horns or anything like bigger or more on top of your head, these would be better because they're wider. These also come in metal. I only have this one as a sample because I don't have any metal ones on me. This is actually like a vintage one that I just ripped off the covering off because I was planning to do something else with it. So you can also repurpose like vintage headbands, or maybe you have some headbands that you don't really like. You can just strip everything off of them and recover them. Like for this one example, this actually I think was one of these before, and I had some of the material left over, so I covered by just literally making a small band and folding in both ends and just whip stitching it through all around. You can perhaps see some of the whip stitching, maybe not. Well, yeah, it's quite. I'll show you that as well, so it's easier for you to understand. So yeah, material-wise, I wanted to touch. Oh, another thing, because I guess some people might be interested in doing wired headbands. Like this is a baby one it has some wire in it, so you can shape it to be bigger. And I'll give you tips how you can do this as well with the same method as this bow. So you can, if you want to, you can add wire to the design and make it so you can shape it in a more voluminous way. Here you can see it's also very, it's covered in the same matter. Perhaps you can see it better here, but it has this small seam along the edge. Hopefully you can see it. And then you just fold over the ends so they finish off nicely. If it's a synthetic material, you can be a little extreme and burn the ends a bit so they don't fray, so you don't have to double fold it. That way there's less bulk behind your ear, which is usually nicer than having more bulk. So, materials. For materials, I just wanted to show some better or not so good ones, and some that, if you really want to use them, how you can use them best. For this tutorial, we'll be using this cotton Nex material. It's two-sided. It's actually, I think, a jacquard weave, but like without any fancy motif on it. It's just, I think, blue and red thread, so it has this nice shift to it. I thought it would be nice and easy to show you guys on this one. Chiffons. Chiffons are not very good for head bows, not for bigger ones like this, because they don't tend to hold shape. You can see it's quite flimsy and it doesn't like to sit in a bow, even you put it in one. So it's really not great for a bow, unless you go for the floppy bow look, which is also a look. You can do that. Like I know a lot of classic brands tend to do like the floppy bow, but they tend to put it on the neckline, so it looks like this pussy bow situation. If you have like a print that you find in chiffon that you really want to use, like you're dying over it, you can back it up with something more substantial. Like I have this same gabardine here that this is made out of, but in white. You can use cotton, you can use anything really. If the print requires a black backing, then it's best to use black. Well, let's try it with this one, perhaps, see how it looks. And perhaps you can back the material with something more substantial to create the bow that you want. But you'll have to overlay it, so twice the materials, of course. So, what else? Lace. Same situation with lace, really. If you have, especially like with stretch lace and flimsier ones like with tulle lace, it's really nice and lovely in a bow, but you have to back it up with something. I like to use contrasting ones, because contrasting materials, because it just makes the design on the lace pop more. And well, unless you go for a full, like let's say Shiro look, then that's better, right? But the lace can be also colored, so it can look like a print from afar. So that's another tip, so to speak. This is Gobelin. It's the same material that this. It's right side out right now. This is not also very good for for bow making. it tends to get really chunky. This is actually a very thin gobelin. Gobelins tend to be really like twice as thick as this one, and it just makes the middle part so chunky, especially if you do like a double bow like this one and not like a single one. Like, let's say we don't do the under part, then perhaps it might work, but then you probably might need some decoration or something to make it more pop. So if you use this one, take that in the back of your head. That might be an issue. Here's some jacquard. This is really nice for making. It is stretch, which is like not very good, but for such a small craft, it's fine. Like, you don't really feel the stretch. I have things that I've made out of stretch velvet, and they work pretty fine. Of course, you can see that it gets really bulky real quick, so you have to take that into consideration as well. But yeah, this type of material that's like sturdy, it holds its shape nicely, especially if you fold it over. It tends to hold the shape really nicely. So this is the type you should go for, as well as like simple cottons. And then I have another chiffon. Well, same story as with the more flimsy one. This has a bit more body to it, so this could work as a bow without anything. For this kind of fabric, I'd probably use the same material but fold it over several times so it has a bit of the body, and make that into the bow rather than just use one single layer of it. Another thing you can use that I actually remembered just before the panel is that you can use how do you interfacing? I think you call this interfacing. It's like a material. It comes in various shapes. I have two types here. There's many types. It's literally like a flimsy well, it's not really mesh. It's like a muslin, I guess, with a glue part on one side. If you touch it, you can feel like these small beads of glue on one side of it. Sometimes they come when they have the glue on both sides, so you can sandwich it together between materials if you need to. But for this specific thing, I could use this to interface it on the inside, and that would stiffen the fabric and would give it the body it needs for a bow. Lace or trims in general, you can use pretty much anything, whatever you come up with. Like, we can use lace applique if we need to or want to for decorating something to make it more fancy. Like, the sky's the limit, really. You can use, this is not a good good color to show it on, but I hope you get the idea that you can use pretty much anything on a bow to try to make it look more fancy. You can trim it with all kinds of lace. Like, here we have a scallop lace. Here we have some more heavy duty, I think it's called tapestry trim or something. It's quite heavy, but it's good for, like, let's say if I'm gonna do this one again and it's a plain fabric rather than with a print, I could use this to complement the couch look for it. But I personally really like the grandma's couch look. Then you can use bigger lace, like this is a Venice lace. This is embroidered tulle for like more opulent look, I guess. Or you can use like trims that are double-sided to make them run along the middle of the bow rather on the edge, like this. I think the baby one had the thing, yeah. Like here, you can see that the lace runs through the middle of it, rather than, well, it runs also on the edge, but you can mix and match it as you would really want to. And you can also add any kinds of charms on the side, on the middle, or just cover it entirely if you go crazy. Why not? I mean, It's your bow, you're gonna wear it, do whatever you want with it. Another point about covering the headband that I wanted to add, because I see materials here on the side for me, is one trick that I do is I choose a ribbon, a nice ribbon, in this case like a velvet one that has stuff on it, but like a ribbon, and I just fold it over so I don't have to deal with the edge, like to fold in the edges so they wouldn't fray. So I tend to use ribbon for that, and just do the same, just whip stitch it. And I think it's a lot nicer than keeping the metal visible, to be honest. Okay, I'm gonna check the chat. Hello everybody, yay! Okay, we're gonna start on making the pattern first. I generally don't use patterns, but for this one, I think it would be best if I show you, because it's easier that way for you to understand what I mean. I have the measurements written down as well. You're gonna use like regular ruler. You can use the triangle one because it helps with the angles, so it doesn't go every in some angle. Okay, I hope you will be able to see the marker here. Because I've seen others use pencils, so it's not that visible on the camera. So the first measurement you should make is lengthwise. Okay, I'm gonna draw a small thing here so you can understand where we're going with it. We're gonna make the center part, which is this. I'm gonna make the smaller bow, which is essentially a triangle, and then the bigger one, which is just a bigger triangle, really. The measurements for them are going to be, for the smaller one here and here is going to be 10 centimeters to 10 centimeters, which is, I've written down for about 4 inches times 4 inches. I hope you can see that. I'm going to show you closer as well. I'm going to tell you the measurements as I go along as well, so it's easier for you to follow. For the smaller one, we're going to do it on fold, so it has more volume. So we're going to do the same 10 centimeters or 4 inches times, how do I do this? Like here. This whole length. This whole length is going to be, the smaller one, 15 inches, 0.5. 15.5 inches, yeah. Sorry, it's the centimeters to inches thing, it's throwing me off a bit. And for the bigger one, it's again the same 4 inches. And the full length, it's also going to be double folded. And the full length for this whole thing is going to be 21 inches. Okay, I'm going to leave it here so you can see it, hopefully. And we're going to start by doing the smaller one first. Here I have just a scrap paper. You can use, I wrote that you have to have like A4 papers, but like you can literally use like old invoices or paper laying around. Don't be wasteful. So use whatever you have, what you're about to throw out, just use that. So we have the point here, and we're gonna measure down 4 inches or 10 centimeters in my case, because I'm from Europe. And since we're gonna do it on fold, I'm just gonna do half of the 15.5 inches. So it's like, you don't really need to do the whole length to understand. If you need to, you can do the whole length, so you can place it on the fabric more easily. I tend to just do it right on the fabric, but like if I would have the pattern, I would just fold the fabric in half. I'm gonna show you how to do that. So I'm gonna just measure out half of the 15.5 inches here. You can use this to just draw the line here, but I figure you might not have this on hand, so I'm just gonna measure the 50.5. Oh, not the 55.5, but the 20 centimeters here as well, and just yeah, and the 4 inches here, and then we just make the triangle, well, the rectangle. Okay, let's cut this one out. If I'm starting to go really too fast, you let me know, so you guys can keep up with it if you're actually making along with me. So I'll just cut it out. And to mark that it's on fold, let me put it like, I'll write that it's the small bow. And to show that it's on fold, I'm just gonna mark it with a dash on the line where it's gonna fold. Well, it can be here as well, but just for clarity for myself. Okay, let's make the bigger one now. Same thing. You measure the 4 inches, and then you measure the 21 inches twice as well. Also, you don't have to be ultra strict with the measurements. If it's an inch off or something, it's fine. It's a bowl. You're not gonna see the difference of a centimeter or so. So do not worry about that. That's the beauty of making crafts yourself. You make your own rules. Okay, centimeters. And mark it. Go. And mark the dash line so you know that it's gonna be on fold here. Well, if you're doing the whole thing, then you don't have to mark with the dash line. Okay, we got the big bow, the little bow, the big bow, the little bow. Now let's do the small middle part. And this one is 4 inches by 4 inches. And since it's a square, I'm not gonna do an unfold pattern for this one. I'm just gonna do it as it is, so it's easier. Okay, let's check the chat. Oh, we're talking about battery here, that's nice. Okay, let's try and get this onto the fabric. I'm gonna move the cheat sheet away. For marking on the fabric, you can use whatever really, from starting from really markers. Well, it's probably not gonna be nice on a light or white fabric if you use like a really dark marker, because it's probably gonna bleed. But if it's like a colored marker on a colored fabric, it's probably fine. since you're gonna fold the edges in anyway, so if it bleeds a little bit, it's fine. I tend to use like old soap, like you know, the bits that left after you used up the soap and you can't really use it anymore. I tend to save those because they're really great with marking on fabric, especially on dark ones. I have tried using colored soap on white fabric. It doesn't really show up that well. So for that, I tend to use either pencil or something other to mark the material. Okay, I cheated a little bit because I cut this strip and prepared this strip already in the width of the 4 inches. So my patterns are kind of a little bit redundant, but I'm gonna show you anyway. So yeah,
Real quick, we do have one question.
yes.
Since it's on the fold, does that mean larger how it was 42 inches long when unfolded?
Okay. Let's see. Let me show you again. The full length, like the smaller one.
Oh, the larger bow. Thank you for the clarification, Dokioken. Since it's on the fold, does that mean the larger bow is 42 inches long when unfolded?
No, it's the full one is. I'll just gonna give you the full measurements again in inches, and then give you the half measurements as in fold. So the full one for the small one, small bow, so it's easier for multiplication. For the smaller bow, the full measurement in length is 15 inches, 15.5 inches, and on fold that would be like half of that. So this is the full measurement. The full. Yeah.
Ah, okay. So the big bow, the 21 is the full
Yeah,
measurement,
for the smaller one.
and
And
then
the bigger one, same story. It's 21 inches full, and half of that.
and then
is
half of
on
that.
fold. Yeah. So this would be like 10
Okay.
and a half, 10 and a half, and like 7.7 around that. 7.7 around that. Is it clearer now? Let me know.
Yes, yes. The person replied that it is clear.
Okay,
Thank you.
awesome. Yeah, no worries. Let me know if you missed anything else or if I missed anything else. Yeah. So let's move on. We have the fabric. We have the patterns in fold in the bigger part, the bigger pieces at least. I tend to measure out roughly how long where I would need to fold. So just take the fabric and fold it on grain, so it's not like offset. You should have the material, unless the material doesn't have really a grain, but if it does, then try to use it on the grain so it stays nice and straight, because the bows tend to go avry in case something, like if the weave is not straight. Yeah, that's a little FYI. Okay, so I would just put on where the fold part is. Here we have the folded material part. I put the dashed line on the fold and just measure out roughly where it ends and mark it. If you have a bigger piece of fabric, then you just mark it all around. You should probably pin it as well. Since the space is so small, I'll just mark it as it is and try to cut it as it is. And I'll pin it down so it doesn't move as I cut it. Oh, by the way, these patterns do include the seam part, so you don't have to worry about that. I do tend to use a really small seam, so do take that into consideration, but then again, I never really understand the need for a bigger seam. if you can work with the smaller ones, and it's really not hard. Okay, let me just, and I'm just gonna cut along the line. Yeah, first piece done. I'm gonna pair it up with the pattern piece so we don't get mixed up, and move on to the smaller one. Once again. Oh, by the way, the red part is the wrong part of the bow, and the darker one is the right one. But you can use whichever if you have a material with the same thing. You can use the lighter part as well. There are no rules really. Well, not unless you want them to be. Okay. We have the material fold. The pattern on. I would like to not miss this piece, so I'm just gonna shift it a bit because zero waste. Generally speaking, I try to use all my materials to the max, even if I have actually bags of really small scraps that I mostly use for bows and stuff for other things. So if you tend to do crafts or sew a lot, I would suggest that you do not throw away the scraps. Well, at least, like, let's say you have this size of scrap, you can still make a bow out of this, so please do not throw them away. I'm just gonna cut along the same line. Again, let's pair them up and put them aside. And the last one, the cute little lion. I'm gonna put the cute little lion on display this time. Since it doesn't have a fold, I'm just gonna mark the fabric as it is. While you guys cut, another thing I want to add is this is not like a set size for bows. This is just like a size that I've noticed that works well for head bows, for my tastes at least. If you want them bigger, if you want them, like, let's say if I was doing a sweet bow rather than like a gothic or a classic one, I would probably make them wider because they tend to be a little wider. Generally speaking, they like their head bows big and chunky, so take that in consideration. Because like gothic ones tend to be a little smaller on the width. And this one, like let's say this pattern, it does not match this one. It's a little smaller. As you can see, the bigger piece is about the size of the smaller smaller head bow size. So ergo, the smaller bow is even smaller. So that's another way. Like you don't have to use these specific measurements, but I would say these proportions work well. So this 4 to 4, 4 to 21, 4 to 15, 16, that's about the proportion that I've found that the bows look really nice, in my opinion, personally speaking. Okay, I was deliberating if I should machine sew or hand sew, and I think I'm gonna hand sew this one so you can keep up, because I tend to do these things really quickly. So let's remove the small pieces. Now I would like to add some trim to this. I've decided I'm gonna use this scallop one. This is not like the best lace, but it matches really well. And on a head bow, you don't really, like on smaller lace like this, you don't really see how good or bad the quality is. Like, it's not bad quality, it's not the best quality, I would say. Just FYI. If I was doing this by machine, I'd probably just put it on it, zigzag along the length of the lace, like the. How can I show? I'm gonna try and show you closer. I'm gonna put the lace with the right sides together. Okay, can you see? Let's see. Like this. And I would zigzag along this invisible part of the lace and just flip it in and straight stitch it on top. That's the way how I usually do it. Since we're doing this hand sewing, I'm gonna just probably baste it on and then try to backstitch it or just pin it on. Yeah, let's pin it on. So you have to take note of the right and wrong sides of the lace. Generally speaking, you can see that the right sides are for like some lace you can't really tell, but if you look really closely, then you can see that one side is really smooth and the other side has this like little bumps and stuff, which are like the technique how they do it. It's essentially the same as sewing. So the ugly parts show on this side. So this is the right side. We're gonna put the right side on top of the thing. I'll just make sure it's the same length and cut it. And let's do the same for the smaller piece. For this bow, I'm gonna trim it so that there's lace on the smaller bow on both sides, and for the bigger part, I'm gonna do it so it's visible just on the under part, since this is really the only part that you see on the top of the bigger part. So it's kind of a waste of lace to hide it all behind, in my opinion. So you can use it, if you use bigger lace, then it's probably best to use it, because like you can see for this bow, it is visible. So I would put it for bigger lace, like this. But for small, like understated lace like this, I'd probably just use one row of lace on the bottom of the bigger bow. Yeah. Okay, let's measure out this piece. I tend to do like a centimeter or so a bit longer than the piece. So in case, oh, we ran out of lace. In case there's some stretching in the material. So, okay. I guess now it's the not so fun or fun part, depending on what kind of person you are, of sewing. So, I find the right side and I put it down. I am going to do a shortcut on this bow by pinning it, and folding it at the same time. So I'm gonna pin the ugly parts. I don't know how to call them. If there's a specific term for them, let me know. In case I'm starting to run out of time, let me know, so I can fast forward things in case I am going too slow. Oh, for the echo, I'm reading comments on the side. So, for the echo, it's probably because I have my headphones on as well. So perhaps the echo was from me rather than from Alex's. So since I'm tuning a little bit, I'm folding in the parts that I pinned, and I pin them again, like this. That way I don't have to sew twice along the same line, and I can just sew once and be done with it, so to speak. And I'm going to remove these pins since the lace is already pinned down. If your material has some stretch to it, like this material has a little bit of stretch to it, be mindful of when you both hand sew and machine sew, because sometimes the lace can pucker. So if it tends to, if you like do a line and you see it puckering, it's probably best to bast it in place, which is like just do a running stitch, like just up and down through the fabric. Basting stitch, and that should hold it down and not go too quick. That way the machine has the opportunity to, so to speak, eat the fabric, so to speak. Or maybe that's just my my small machine, because I'm still working on small house machine rather than on an industrial one. Reading the chat and trying to pin things is not that easy, guys. But do tell me which have been your favorite panels so far. Did you see Joel's panel before me about Action Lydia? Oh, cool! Do take your time. It's still gonna be a while before I finish pinning it, so your patterns will be done and cut in no time. Okay, I'm gonna flip it and do the same on the, oh, rather I'll sew now so I don't have the issue with pins messing with my sewing, because I hate that. Okay, so let's start. I'm just gonna do a simple back stitch. You can do a running stitch if you want to. I tend to be a bit of a structure freak. I don't know how to say that. It's, I want to make sure the pieces are strong. Like if you tug on them, or if you, I don't know, somebody steps on your bow, tries to rip off your wig with your bow, then both the bow at least stays in place, so it doesn't fly off in all the parts that you have sewn it on. My god, this thread hates me. Okay. Just making sure that I catch the lace on the other side. I'm doing the back stitch so it's barely visible on this side, like a small, like here you have the thread coming out. I hope I am in, I'm kind of in in frame. I'm just going back in, like right beside it, like this. Like this. So it looks like there's no seam. Well, kind of. There's small dents, but from afar it looks like there's no seam. Oh, awesome to know that you have learned some tricks here. I really hope that this panel would, in case you like you know how to sew a bow, like it's not that hard, but at least I can show some tricks and tips that I use. So if you have any other questions, I can try to answer them to the best of my abilities. Knowing that I'm like not I'm seamstress by trade, I'll let you know that it's not that hard. It does take a lot of patience, so take that into consideration. But aside from that, you can hone the craft the more you do it. So yeah, I saw the alterations panel. I totally missed out that it was DIY. I thought it was just like a talking panel, and then I clicked in and I realized that it was a sewing one, and I'm totally sad because I missed it. I had to go to work essentially. Uh, but I'm totally gonna watch that once I'm done with everything, and I totally want to see. Maybe I can learn something else new, especially for plus size Lolita. I often struggle with the making the fit right. Well, I try to make the fit as much as best as I can, but I don't have that much opportunity, I guess, to try and make bigger sizes that often. So anything from the horse's mouth, so to speak, is very helpful for me. Yeah, the brand altering one, yeah. Okay, we can see the other side. It's not that pretty, but it's mostly going to be hidden. Oh, I can meanwhile tell you about how to add the wire for this one. Like, let's say I want to add wire for this bow. Then there are two options. The janky one, that's like you can add in the janky way to literally any bow that you already have ready. It's just you literally get, let's, yeah, I literally put aside, yeah, you get some type of wire that's pliable enough, but that's not too flimsy, that holds its shape well, but also not too thin, so it doesn't, like, after you bend it several times, so it snaps. Because some I couldn't tell you which one is the best one, but like this is I think this is like a literally a vintage electricity coil or something that I got from my grandfather. But it's the best wire, to be honest. So this is, I guess, a copper wire through and through, and but it holds the shape really well. I've used it for brims, for bonnets, and for top hats. I used to make like small mini top hats with like the brims being really curved, and this was one of the things that I used to make sure the curves stayed. So the janky one, the janky way how to add is literally just whip stitch it on. Do a small loop. Just do. Need some pliers for this. Well, you can do it with your fingers, but I've done it with my fingers and it just get cut up really bad. Just do like a small loop, so the thread has some place to snag on. Well, not snag on, but to stay, so it doesn't move around, shift around, and poke out after some time. And you literally just whip stitch around the wire, but to the inside, to the wrong side, not to the right side, but to the wrong side of the bow, and literally it's done. That's the janky, easy. I have no time to do nice back for the bow type of version. The nicer version is split into two again. Like, let's say this. I would add about 2 centimeters, which is I think about an inch. Oh, I have this. Let's check. I have, yeah, 2.5. About 2.5 or less. I mean, an inch for you, 2.5 centimeters for me. Um, I would add an inch to the pattern so it's a little wider, so it has more material at the edge. Then I would fold it twice over. If you want to add lace, this is the time to add lace, but make sure that there is a channel that remains in the material. So I would run a stitch. I'm gonna try to show you closer. So I would try to run a stitch here, and if I'm adding a lace, then a stitch on top of it. This is the wrong side, right? So there would be 2 rows of stitching here. And after I finish off both sides, because if you do this, then you would need to do it for both the top and the bottom of the bow. And then I would just feed the wire through and also do the small loopy thing and just whip it in place so it doesn't move around, so it just stays there. It needs to be the exact length, so let's say this is the inside of the channel. It should look like this on the inside, like that. And then you just yeah.
Sorry, Zellico, we have another question. Would craft wire be too soft?
I'm not entirely sure what you mean by craft wire, because if you mean the type, let's see. If you mean the type that is to make these loopy things, then yes, that would be enough. You know, like if it holds a necklace enough, it should be enough. Of course, unless the fabric is really heavy, but then again, like I don't think there's that much fabric in the bow for it to be an issue. But I would say, like, what is this, like 16 gauge, probably something like that, or thicker would be best. If it's like super small, I know there's these like needle thin wires that are very bendy. They don't really hold shape very well. But there's a trick you can use that you take several rows of that bendy wire and you twist it, and that way you make like a semi bigger one with the small thinner wire. Hope that helps. Well, that's the way that I would do it, because I don't really like, if I didn't have this, I'd probably look for other wire that I have laying around at home rather than go and buy it. So if you have like a thin wire, this is quite thick, I would say, but it bends well. Like other thicker material wires, they don't really bend that well. Like let's say if you know those wire hangers, it's really hard. It doesn't bend. Like it's about the same width, but it doesn't bend that well. So if you do go to a craft shop, I would just try the edge of it, like bend it a bit, and see if you put like a material on it, would it hold the shape or not. And if it's too thin, it's fine. You can twist several ones together and make it a bit sturdier. But then you would need to be a little more dexterous by threading it through, because sometimes then the small bits tend to catch on the fabric, and that may pull some threads or something. But you can scotch tape around them to avoid that as well. So there's ways how to avoid that. Or you can just use the janky way, and that's the easiest one. Hope that helps. Okay. Oh yeah, I started to say, and that was the double fold is if you don't want to have too much fabric on your bow. Other way is that you double the pattern. Of course, well, you don't really need to make it wider then. You double the pattern, and you sew it like right sides together, fold it outward. Then you have like the seam like this, and then you sew along again to make the channel, because essentially for the wire to be inserted you just need a channel to be able to. Some bows already have channels, so you can kind of unpick some parts and try to shove it in if you want to, and make your like regular floppy bow into like a wired one for more opulence. So I hope that helps. Okay, I'm gonna try to keep up with the sewing. The altering bundle. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I usually pad my. I don't really have a dress form. I have like those store mannequins. That's like just foam. It's not even a dress form really. But I tend to pad that as well if I am draping uh, the pattern because I can't like construct the pattern. I'm not that skilled. I would wish that I was, but I mostly resolve to altering patterns, the patterns that have worked for me, or new ones if I have some other shape in my mind or the client has something else in mind. But yeah, that also, even if I do pad the perfect shape for, let's say, a size, I don't know, for a bigger size, there's so many shapes that I would need like 200 dress forms for that, because some people have bigger busts, some people have almost no busts, some people have big hips, which sometimes takes like for you would think that for Lolita it doesn't need to be taken into consideration, but some people have very narrow waists and larger hips, and if you're making a skirt, you really have to take that into consideration so the person can actually get into the skirt and not like rip anything, because it's both best for the client and for the garment as well. Because sometimes if you're too hard on the garments, they're gonna not last that long. And I try to make sure that my garments last longer than most, well, at least in the fast fashion world. Doki, have you finished your pattern? Yeah, Dix, you're sure. You're right. It's always like, on one hand, for me as a not the best seamstress, it's always like, let's just slap an elastic on top of it and like make sure it fits definitely. But if you're making fitted pieces, it's not really an option. Also, it's like people fluctuate sizes. Like I fluctuate sizes; it's normal. So even if you make the perfect fit, I've had customers like send me measurements. I make the piece in the measurements, and then they wear it, and it's either too small or too big because they've actually gained or lost some weight. So that's also a struggle. That's why I'm always a bit crazy on the backlacings, because I find it's, first of all, it's the most comfortable because you eat a cake and then you have to breathe, right? On the other hand, it's good for fluctuations in sizes, which a lot of people do, especially women, like with hormones and everything. Like sizes fluctuate, that's normal. And you have to make sure everything fits even after that cake or that not so great period time. Okay, we're almost done with the first row. Oh, another thing, a note maybe about hems. like I've torn this hem on the bows, so I'm pretty sure it's not gonna unravel anytime soon, especially since it's not like a garment, so it doesn't unravel. The threads are gonna stay where they are. In case you have a material that does unravel, then I would whip stitch if you're hand stitching, or zigzag along the edge, or you can use the. Do you have them on hand? Yeah, like pinking shears, like with the type with the zigzag, or I have ones with the scallop as well. That's just gonna help with so it doesn't unravel. It's gonna help to keep it in place. I know that you guys have the fabric tack or something, like some kind of glue that you tack on the seams as well, so you can use that. I'm not entirely sure where or how, but I would guess some kind of craft stores. Uh, Probably some other craft people might know where to get that thing. It's like a small glue that you glue the edge so it doesn't unravel. It just holds it in place. I would figure you can use the regular white glue for that as well, unless it dries too hard. If it's elastic, then that's fine. Like here locally, we have PVA glue, and if I would use that, it's probably fine. It would be a little shinier on the edge, but since it's folded on the inside, nobody would see it anyway. So that's just another small tip. Okay, let's pin the other side now. Which one's the shorter? What types of bows do you usually use, guys? Do you use the head bows only, or do you tend to make the pin back ones, or buy the pin back ones to use them in other things like bags or hats or headpieces in general? Yeah, freight check. Yeah, that's the one. I don't think we have the freight check here, so I'm kind of unfamiliar. I've seen other crafts like tutorials use it, but I'm not familiar with it. I think I've seen something similar locally, but I don't really have use for it, so I've never bought it to try. Oh, great. Yeah, you can see the link then for the freight check thing. Alright, I forgot that it's COVID and you can't go in to any stores anymore. I've been working from home, so it doesn't like really feel that crazy, but yeah, I get reminded every time I go out. And if I forget my face mask, I have to go all the way up. And I live in the 5th floor with no elevator. So that's a struggle. Oh, I totally realized I should have used the opportunity to show how to make like face masks. Maybe next time. I was so freaking out about this panel. It's so chill, you guys. I could do this again. Yeah, then we could do like face mask or something. Make it cute. Okay. All pinned and ready to go. Okay. So what else is going on, guys? the last day of Royal Vegas. Are you excited about the final panels? I think we have Avina after me with the laundry one, right? It's kind of exciting. Hope she shows some tips on how to clean the like old school type pieces. I had some old school dress that I washed. It was like black with white lace. And of course the lace got colored. And it's sitting in my wardrobe. And I can't like I'm unmotivated to actually try and salvage it. Maybe having this panel can help me. Trying to figure out what other tip I might share. I don't have that much. Oh, did you know that you could use, like, if you want to trace papers? I've seen the horrors that you do with cutting right into the patterns of, like, the pattern, like, what do you call them? Well, the patterns from, like, books, like, let's say the Otome one. Like, you cut the patterns out right as they are. Always screaming in terror because you can never like uncut that. What I've always done is I've traced it on either the pattern paper or you can use baking paper to trace it. Of course, it works for narrower patterns because for if it's really big like a skirt pattern, then they probably should either patch up several ones or just bite the bullet and get the pattern tracer one, which is like a little see-through. But yeah, baking paper is great for that. I think most of my patterns are actually on baking paper. That way you don't have to cut into the pattern pieces and you can use other sizes as well. Or if you want to sell the book or journal, then you can with the patterns intact. This almost feels like it should be an ASMR one. Okay, do you have any other questions so far? No, it's kind of uninteresting right now. We can try and do the last one real quick so we can move on to more exciting parts of the tutorial.
No questions right now. Just a quick time check. We have about 20 minutes left in this panel.
Awesome. Okay, thanks. Okay, I might actually skip the lace on the last bit just so I can show show how to put it all together. So I'm gonna quickly run stitch this one. Oh, another trick that I learned was that you can iron some fabrics without an iron, but with just a pair of scissors. Like, you can fold it where you need to, and use the back end of a scissor, and just run it really strongly against the edge, and that way it gets ironed. It works mostly for natural fibers, but it works for some unnatural ones as well, like synthetics, I mean. Also, the tough thing about hand stitching is the tension. You need to make sure that you don't pull at the thread too much, so it stays nice and lays down nicely instead of bunching up. It almost feels like when your deadline approaches for a piece and you're like struggling to finish it. Out. Okay. I don't know what time it is for you guys. It's like noon or early morning right now, right? It's quite odd. I saw some people in the Discord saying it's like 9 a.m. for them, and I'm like looking out the window and it's 8 p.m. right now. It's so strange. Okay, we reached the end of one side. Just the other one. Oh my god. Noon, really? Well, it must be nice. You have daylight right now. Actually, with the winter coming on, it's really noticeable that it's getting dark real quick right now. Although it's not that cold. I would think it would be colder now, but I'm literally going out in a single small jacket and it's fine. Okay, I'm trying to rush this a bit so it's not as neat as I would like it to be. But I would hope that it gets the point across anyway. Oh, another thing about materials is if you're super lazy like me and you don't want to do hems for, well, not hems, what do you call them, seams for a long time, you can use like really long, really wide ribbons, like the type that are 5 centimeters, which is like what? Let's see, like 5 inches? No, wait, 2 inches, 2 inches wide or wider, and have a ribbon run through the middle. Like, let's say you have this. This is about 2 inches, yeah. You can stitch a decorative lace or something between them. That way you get the width, roughly the width, and you don't have to deal with edge binding or sewing down the edge. Also, you can find like ribbons with nice prints on them as well, especially with past the Halloween season. Well, I would go for the Halloween ones, but like some people are Christmas, so and Christmas ribbons definitely are out there right now. And you can do some nice Christmas ribbons for your Christmas cords. If you want to be extra fancy, you can use more than just 2 ribbons, but make them more narrow. and mix and match the colors or the patterns. Like, could use a grass grain ribbon on the edge and organza or organdy ribbon in the middle for see-through effect. That could be really nice. And if you sandwich together two see-through organdy ribbons, then you can put something between them, like pom-poms or something, for a more fairy tale look, or sweet head bow, or just hair clips. Really, you can use that. It's the same thing for hair clips as well. Okay, we're nearing the end. Finally! I'm going to show you how to put the things together now. And we're going to use the little trick with the scissor iron thing for the middle part. So that way you can practice it a bit. Okay, we got these two parts now. We are going to fold them in half. You can mark them with something else. I generally tend to just do the ironing thing to find the center of each of the pieces. Do the same. This one. And then you will flip in. Let's do it for a bigger one. Then you will like split the pins in so you can see where the center part is, because I figure you might not see. So as I do, so this is the center part, and you're gonna flip in both ends, but you're gonna overlap them about half an inch, like this. See, this is the centerpiece, but this is where the edge is. Just a little bit, half an inch, and the same for the other one, like this. I tend to just pin them down like this, so they're not gonna go away anywhere. Like this. I'm gonna do it for the other one as well. Again, let's put the pins in so you can see. And overlap them a little bit, like this. Now, if I do this by a machine, I would usually just run a straight stitch through the middle, like from pin to pin, that part. But since we're short on time and we're hand stitching, so it's going to take more time, I'm just going, like, I flip this over, so the ugly part is to the bottom. And I'm going to do the same with the smaller part. I'm going to align the middle line, like this. Generally, you can place this as high or as low as you want. I tend to think that if you put it roughly in the middle line, like the top smaller bottom line to the center of the bigger one, it looks best. So I'm gonna go with that, and I'm gonna pin it again. There's pins in it already, but I'd rather leave them in just to be safe, because I don't like that. Then flip it over and just gonna straight stitch through the middle of it. I'll use contrasting thread for this one, so you can see better. And for this one, it doesn't need to be too pretty. It's just there to hold these flaps together and to hold the pieces together so they don't shift. So I'm gonna use this center part. Just gonna make sure my thread stays in place. And I'm just gonna running stitch through it. You could probably mark with a crayon or with the soapy thing, so you have a line. But I'm gonna use the pins as guidelines, and just gonna stitch through all the layers. It's way easier with the machine, of course. But let's see what we're doing here. I went a little off center, but it's fine. It's not going to be visible. Just gonna finish it. Like so. This essentially is where the fun part starts. I'm gonna finish on the stitch. Like so. You can remove the pins now, or you can keep them in and remove them later. I tend to remove them now, so I would see how the fabric folds, because we're gonna fold the fabric now into the bow.
Another time check.
Yep.
We are coming up on the ending time that was scheduled, but the next panel doesn't start for about 17 minutes, so feel free to go over into the buffer
okay.
time.
It's gonna be 5 minutes, I think. Not more than that.
Perfect.
Okay. We're gonna use the small piece now. I'm gonna fold it in twice, like this. So it's like a third of its size now. Or you can do it even more. You can fold in the sides and then fold it in on itself again, like this. Whichever like size you prefer for your middle piece. You get it to that size. I tend to pin it down so it doesn't shift again. Just a couple pins, top, bottom, like this. And now we fold. We just kind of zigzag the material up and down, like this, to make it into a bow shape. You can do smaller zigzags or bigger ones, whichever strike your fancy, really. Just make sure the folds lay nicely before you actually start sewing them. I'm gonna prepare my needle because I'm gonna need it right now. So I'm gonna fold it like this. 1, 2, 3, 3.5. Yeah. Make sure you align the stitches in the middle, so it's more or less aligned. Then you, if you didn't finish the, if you didn't cut the thread, you could use the same thread. I cut it, so I just go through it and then I just loop around it to hold the folds in place a couple of times. You don't need to do a lot, like this. I tend to leave my needle in and just park it here, so to speak. Then I take my little middle piece, I put it so the part goes down like this. This is the wrong side, this is the right side of the middle piece. And this is the back side of the bow. This way I'm covering the ugly parts of the seams, so you don't need to finish them. I just tack the first bit in place like this and park it again here. make sure the threads are all the way. Then I go around the ribbon like this. I tend to use one of the pins, pull it out, just put it right here in the middle so it just doesn't shift around. I make sure that it's in the center, more or less, of the bow. Then I fold. Yeah?
Got a quick question. Is it best to hand sew the gather?
I would always hand sew the gather. I wouldn't machine gather at all because it doesn't have enough of the gather, because you need to have this amount of fabric gathered into literally what, like fifth of its size. So I would gather it with a hand only. Then you take the middle part and you fold it in on itself and fold it over the starting bit like this. Then I use the same pin that I have here and just put it in to hold it in place. Make sure that it's even. Double check. You can arrange your folds. This is why I don't sew through the whole layers. I just loop around them because I can arrange the bits and pieces if I need to. In case something like this, like it goes more towards the back, I want it to the front, so I can just pull it back where I want it, so the folds are neat, or as I want them to be. So it's better to not sew through the whole layers, but just loop around them, so you have some. You can variate them if you need to. Once you're happy with how it looks, just use the same pin. I tend to use. I tend to start at the side rather here, just so I can tuck in these little ugly bits, so it's nicer. And then just use the needle to tuck it in. So on top of it. It doesn't want to be tucked, I guess. Yeah, I'm gonna use really big stitches for this, just because of time. But I would use like small, tiny stitching that's barely visible along this edge to make sure the bow stays in place. And when I stitch only through the middle part fabric, not into the other material, because I like to have the bows versatile, so I can thread the head bow through them. Okay, I'm gonna finish it here. This. So essentially, your bow is done. You can still arrange it if you want to. I don't have some nice head bows, but if you want to put it on a head bow, you just loop it through. Done, like this. If you want to have it as a hair clip, just make sure your hair clip is big enough. Just thread it through the middle part, and there you go. You have a hair clip. Same with the back pin back. You just sew on the pin back. If you're planning to use it in your hair, I would not sew it on because it tends to catch in hair. Well, unless you loop it on a head bow, then it doesn't matter because it goes more onto the back rather than the bottom of the bow. Like you would put it here, not here. So there you go. You can put some decorations on it. You can still add charms to it. You can, if you want, you can add small bits of applique, as I showed in the very start. So essentially, this is it. This is how you make a bow. I hope you learned something. I hope you're gonna make a bow and show me. Be sure to tag me, #EatMeEatMe, or just hashtag Royal Vegas online. So we can see your beautiful creations, even after the event is done. So be sure to do that. Okay, thank you so much, guys. If you have any last minute questions before they cut us off, let me know. Okay, thank you. Have a nice evening and have fun with the Venus panel. Bye.